Good day. I'm Molly Karam, and you're listening to the First Take podcast. When's the last time you ordered clothes online and got to try them on before paying for them? Never, right? Well, that's exactly what JackThreads.com does. With JackThreads, you can try out any other stylish tees, jeans, and more at home for free, and you only pay for what you keep. Such an awesome idea. Whether it's a big-name clothing brand or the JackThreads in-house line, you can be sure you are 100% in love with the items you ordered before spending a cent. So instead of playing internet roulette or gambling on a new size, just use JackThreads.com. You'll have 7 days to decide if your new items are working for you. Try them on, get a second opinion, and make sure you're thrilled. If it's not a fit, don't worry. JackThreads gives you everything you need to ship things back, packing tape, and a prepaid shipping label, all completely free. Go to JackThreads.com and enter code FIRST when you submit your tryout for 20% off anything you keep. That's JackThreads.com, code FIRST to save 20% on anything you keep. Never buy before you try again.
What's up, First Take fam? Hope you all had a wonderful weekend. Thanks for joining us on a Monday. Starting January 3rd, First Take is moving to ESPN weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern. We will see you there. But we have lots to discuss on this football Monday. Cowboys, Pats, Raiders, Giants, and more will break down Super Bowl contenders and pretenders. Plus, after being benched, is Brock Osweiler done in Houston? Also, should Aaron Rodgers be this year's NFL MVP? And Hall of Famer Eric Dickerson in the house. We're going to get into it. Let's get it started. Well, hello there. Welcome into First Take on a Monday. Thank you so much for hanging with us. Hope you all had a wonderful weekend. Max Kellerman, Stephen A. Smith are back, and so is Donovan McNabb. Full house today,
What's
just
up,
how
you?
I like it. How we
Let's
doing,
do it.
guys?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
I
Wonderful
heard
weekend.
there was something you wanted to talk about real fast.
I had a great weekend.
Uh-huh.
Cowboys kind of ruined it.
Yeah.
But even before
been the pattern.
that, Bernard Hopkins, great job calling the fight. And I want to applaud you for your kindness. To watch that man sit there and talk about how he didn't get knocked out. It's like, Bernard, I love this brother. We go back more than 20 years. I've been begging him, more so Roy Jones, but to a lesser degree him, no more fighting. And I was happy that he said he's not going to fight anymore. You're 51. You're younger, that doesn't happen. But you're 51.
There's a reason that no one as old as him or nearly as old as him has ever won a fight like that. But he was a 2-1 favorite going in. The thing about a fighter when they get knocked out or hurt with a shot, they don't always know what happened. I've seen fights where a fighter's been knocked out, 10 count, out. And 2 minutes later, he's up talking about, what are you talking about? Why'd they stop the fight?
Yes.
Because that's the reason they were knocked out. They were rendered unconscious.
I know we got to move on. My problem was you spoke to him about a half hour after the fight, and he was still sitting there saying,
I told him he was hit with a shot.
You did tell him. You were very, very kind.
This is a legend. Last fight. Donovan,
Knocked
I
out of the ring. I
know
don't think
you
he's
and
gonna come
Bernard in
back.
Philly had a little thing going on, right?
Leave it alone.
My mother said, if
Leave it
you
alone.
ain't got nothing nice to say,
Yeah.
don't say anything.
Leave it alone.
I like your mother. Wise words. All right, coming up later, speaking of LA guys, Hall of Fame running back Eric Dickerson will stop by. How does he see things changing for the Rams in the post-Jeff Fisher era? That's coming up a little bit later in the show, but we start with Sunday Night Football. Dak Prescott was back at it, completing 88.9% of his passes. That's the second highest completion percentage in a game in NFL history where a quarterback threw at least 30 times, and Dallas snapped Tampa Bay's 5-game win streak. Stephen A., is it time to finally be afraid of these Cowboys? Say it.
Yeah. They're starting.
You speak up a
Huh?
little.
Did you
I don't
say? I
think
didn't hear
people
that.
can hear you. What'd you say?
I said yeah.
Yeah.
I said yeah. All right. I said yeah, y'all.
Say it with your chest, Stephen A.
I can't say it with my chest right now. I just can't do it. I can't do it
Never
because.
been one to mumble.
Well, these damn new braces.
I was
ain't
about
hurting
to-
me. I mean, they ain't helping me in that regard. That's what happens when you crack your tooth because you're grinding so much and eat sweets. But I paid the price. Here's the deal. Ezekiel Elliott is a beast. Mm-hmm. And the way this dude is running the football and the way this offensive line takes pride in blocking for this man running the football, that combined with Dak Prescott's ability to avoid making mistakes is a plus. But then Rob Marinelli got these dudes on defense playing hard. Ain't the greatest defense in the world.
Right.
But they don't relent. They keep coming. And I watched Tampa last night. They came back. They were down 17-3, ultimately came back, tied the score at 2020. I get all that. But I never felt like Tampa Bay was going to win this game. Because somehow, some way, the Dallas Cowboys give you the impression that when it's time to make a play, they're going to do it. Usually, I'm calling them the accident waiting to happen. The reason why all of this is news is because I've gotten myself to the point where I still believe they will lose. I'm not wavering from the fact that they will lose. But I think you're going to have to beat them. The only way they're going to beat themselves is if Jerry Jones messes it up and Tony Romo gets up in there. If not for that, you're going to have to beat them. They're not going to beat themselves.
See, I'm not scared of the Cowboys because I'm a Giants fan. Why would I be scared of the Cowboys? Beat them twice. 2 times. Only 2 losses this season, both to the Giants. If anything, the only thing to be worried about if you're a Giants fan is you got to beat them 3 times to get out of the NFC. That's tough to do to a divisional rival, and they were both close games. Here is, if you like Dallas now and you didn't before, they came up with a little pass rush, Donovan. They could bring a little pressure with 4, which is something new for them, which is what they need against the Giants if they face them, because that's the Giants' weakness on the offensive line. And Jameis didn't have a big game, but that's partly because of the pass rush. The offensive line is excellent. We've known it all season. And I think the scariest thing about them, Donovan, again, not as a Giants fan, but as a fan of every other team's fan should be a little scared, is that they're disciplined and young. Absolutely. They got the pep in their step, the fresh legs of youth, and somehow they have the discipline, particularly at the quarterback position, of veterans.
You know, it's funny because as a player, one thing you don't want to hear is when people start talking, basically saying, you guys need to lose 1 game before going into playoffs, just to kind of recalibrate things and refocus on the task at hand. I thought the loss to the Giants was the best thing that could have happened to the Dallas Cowboys. After that happened, I still kept the Dallas Cowboys number 1 in the NFC because Seattle, to me, is so inconsistent on offense that I don't know if you can rely so much on Russell Wilson to do it all. Now, defensively, I mean, the communication is not the same. Obviously, Earl Thomas isn't there. They're not getting the pass rush consistently like they used to, but I think they'll turn it around. The thing about the Dallas Cowboys that stand out to me is the fact that they are balanced. They're very effective running the football. The play-action game plays so much of a big part in their offense that you got guys standing wide open. You watch a play that happened when Dunbar caught the ball on the right side of the field. Dak Prescott went through 4 reads. 3 of them were wide open. He skipped right past Jason Witten. He skipped right past Cole Beasley, and he went to his 4th read. Then he went to another play where Dez Bryant caught the ball in the middle of the football field where more guys were wide open. Now, you can do that offensively when you're able to run the football. They're relying on stopping the run, and guys are wide open in the passing game. And you have a quarterback that's so efficient that the chains continue to move and they put points on the board. Where defensively, Rob Marinelli doesn't have to blitz. He's running that same defense that made Lovie Smith very successful, that made guys like Herm Edwards very successful. He can go into that Tampa, too, and just let his 4 guys just rush the quarterback. Now, can they do that in the playoffs? That's the thing that I'm worried about. Can they do that in the playoffs if offensively they struggle a little bit in 3rd downs? If they're able to get things going in that regard and defensively they can take over, I think it's hard beating the Dallas Cowboys in the NFC.
Here's my deal. Tampa Bay comes back after reeling early. So what do? They come back. They tie the score 2020. Next thing you know, Ezekiel Elliott scampers for a 42-yard run. These are the kind of things that concern me because of their running game and how potent it is. This dude, Ezekiel Elliott, and it was apropos that Emmitt Smith was in attendance, cheering him on the whole bit. I love the fact that he jumped into the Salvation Army Bowl. I thought that was real cool, and it's what I loved.
He was smart not to mess with that, too.
It's the Salvation Army kettle, red Salvation
Army kettle. I'm sorry, but I'm just saying. You think about Salvation Army, you think about people being charitable or whatever. That brings a lot of attention to it. I thought it was a great move on his part. But I got to tell you something. This kid's ability to run the football is what broke Tampa's momentum. And that's the thing that resonates with me. Whatever we were expecting and anticipating from Tampa, with this kid Brate, who's pretty good, with Evans, who we know is a stud, they go out there and somehow, some way, Dallas's offense gets the ball and disrupts everything.
Well, except the Giants' defense now, and I bring up because all season long it's like Seattle. If someone's going to stop Dallas once they got rolling, it's Seattle. But now I look at the Giants not only because they beat Dallas twice this year, both times, But Donovan, and it's not just because I'm a Giants fan, that defense is looking elite right now in consecutive weeks against Dallas and then against the Lions. And these are like offenses that have been potent at various points in this season.
But Stafford
They've given up. Okay, fine.
And that fumble really
They still have given
around.
up a grand total of 1 touchdown in those 2 weeks. And if you look at the formula right now for that team, for the Giants, it's dominant defense, just good enough offense with a weapon in Odell, a little slant, and that can take it 70, 80 yards to the house. Minus Odell, which is actually an extra dimension, an extra dynamic dimension for them, it's reminiscent of the way they've succeeded in recent years when they've been good as a wild card team.
Well, I mean, you can say that, but also the element of the turnover. You know, Eli pretty much threw 3 interceptions in that game if they would have caught the football. I mean, and that's the whole thing about the Giants. We could talk about their defense. We can talk about the pressure. Steve Magnolia has done a great job with those guys. They are playing well. There were opportunities missed in the Dallas game that I thought Dak Prescott probably will look back and get cleaned up. I'm sure they'll utilize Dez a little bit more when they on different routes. Now, he's not a route runner, so that means everyone else is going to have to elevate their game. But it's hard to beat a team 3 times in a row.
Yeah, that's the issue.
And the whole thing about it, and they're going to have to play in Dallas. Now, that's another issue that no one's really talking about, going in that dome. The way they play in that dome with running the football, also Dak Prescott protecting the football and being efficient, it says a lot about
Eli wins on the road in the playoffs. That's what he does.
At one time, Dallas was perceived as not really having a home field advantage.
Right.
But now that they've got this running game, it's changed everything.
Yep.
Let's focus in on that. Perfect segue for me. Zeke taking care of business as well, putting up 159 yards and a TD right into that Salvation Army red kettle we just discussed. Elliott is the NFL's leading rusher by a large margin. DeMarco Murray, fittingly, the former Cowboys running back, is a distant second by about 300 yards. Max, the MVP chants continue. Where does Zeke rank in that conversation?
I don't think he does. And I know what that sounds like because he has that breakaway speed, and he's also become a patient runner. Like, he'll wait for the hole to open, but they don't touch him. Like, forever, they don't touch him. And that's
they
a
didn't
lot.
touch DeMarco Murray either.
I'm glad you brought that up. Was DeMarco Murray a legitimate MVP candidate? So I looked it up. He got 2 first-place votes compared to Aaron Rodgers' 31 that year. In fact, he and Tony Romo each got 2 first-place votes. J.J. Watt got 13, and Aaron Rodgers got 31. And DeMarco Murray, who we all know is not an MVP caliber player. He's a good player. He's a good running back. He's a B+ at least.
He had a great year.
Had a great year behind a great offensive line in Dallas. The same one they have now, only not quite as good as it is now. 1,800 yards with a 12-4 record. Now, do I think Zeke is better than him? Yeah, I do. I think he's a little better than him. But I didn't really think DeMarco Murray was an MVP candidate that year. It was largely the offensive line. And to be honest, I feel the same way about Zeke this year. I think it's tough to call a running back an MVP in this day and age, Donovan McNabb.
You know, I'm going to disagree. And the reason I say disagree because Tom Brady is number 1 in my MVP rating.
I agree.
But I can't give. The reason I say Tom, and I can't give Tom because of the suspension.
Right.
He was suspended for 4 games, and they played well without him. We know what Tom can do, but you have to give credit when credit is due for Tom Brady. Number 2 is Ezekiel Elliott. Number 3 is Aaron Rodgers. Number 4, I have Matt Ryan. And number 5, I have Matthew Stafford. And I put them in that order because, you know, for Ezekiel Elliott, you still have to understand this young man is a rookie. He's a rookie coming in. We haven't seen anything like this pretty much since, Barry Sanders, maybe? I mean, for a guy to be able to pick up, 1,300 yards rushing right now, I think he'll probably finish with 1,600.
1,500.
Yeah.
I think he's over 1,500 right now.
Ezekiel
1,551 yards.
Yeah. But that's saying a lot for where he's at right now, let alone he's catching the ball out of the backfield. Not like Le'Veon Bell, where he's coming out with about 8 catches for 60, 80 yards. But yet and still, he's establishing the run in which he is the focal point of that offense. And as a rookie, you're asking a lot of him, and he's producing. So is he an MVP candidate, and should he win the MVP? Yes, I think he probably should win the MVP. And I said it before. He'll win the MVP. And Rookie of the Year will be Dak Prescott. I have one follow-up, Stephen A., real quick, because Bill Polian was on this show, and off camera we're talking, and he said, because I'm arguing offensive line, and he's talking about how great Zeke is, and he says the back makes the line, not vice versa. Absolutely.
You agree with that?
Absolutely. It's just like quarterbacks make receivers better. receivers make quarterbacks better. But in order for that to happen, your offensive line has to pick up their guys. And so when I look at it in a sense for the Dallas Cowboys, we can talk about what they have on the offensive line. They've got first rounders up there. You know, Tyron Smith is playing well. But in order for them to put up the numbers that they've been doing, it's because of the running game. That's why DeMarco Murray should have won MVP, because no one really talked about how good they were then because they were young. Now they're a veteran line, and Ezekiel Elliott is picking up more yards pretty much than DeMarco Murray did.
I agree with you with your top two. I think it should be Tom Brady. I think Ezekiel Elliott. I got Dak Prescott and
over Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers. I mean, it's a pick 'em to me. Aaron Rodgers, 32 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, QBR 72, absolutely balling, but they struggled at that middle point of the season. So because of that, I got to hold that against them when I'm comparing that to Dak Prescott, who's got the gorilla on his back, got the team wanting Tony Romo up in there, the owner chirping away at the mouth and all of this other stuff, all of these distractions, and none of it is phasing him whatsoever, so it's not a distraction. But where Ezekiel Elliott comes in, and this is why I keep saying that I put him above Dak Prescott, even though the quarterback is the more important position. Ezekiel Elliott, 1,551 yards rushing, 13 touchdowns, averaging 5 yards a carry. Only since week two he had 83 yards rushing. Since that time, he has never rushed for less than 86 yards. He's got about 5 or 6 games for over 100 yards. This dude's got 1,500 plus yards rushing. He's got 2 games to go. Legitimately could end up rushing for about 1,800 plus yards, right. Okay? And then when you look at that, combined with the offensive line, it's one thing to have a massive offensive line to protect you. It's another thing entirely to have a running game to go with that. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, takes a boatload of pressure off of Dak Prescott, which is why I could take a little bit away from Dak, give a little bit more to Ezekiel Elliott, and that's where I'm at.
But I really don't understand these arguments. First of all, he's not the best player at his position, Zeke, and I don't mean to hate on him. He's been amazing. But Le'Veon Bell is better than he is. I mean, he's just better. Now, he missed 4 games, so he can't be in that MVP conversation.
And he hasn't always performed better because Tomlin and them didn't give him the ball enough.
Right, okay, fine.
And they use him as a receiver.
Exactly.
A lot of
okay, but that's part of his value. We're not just judging him. You can only be the MVP if you're used as a pure running back, as a halfback. You know, part of Le'Veon Bell's value is he could be everywhere. Okay, and he missed 4 games. He was suspended, so by my Tom Brady argument, he's out of it anyway. My point is, when you're playing a less important position and you're not even the best player at your position, very tough for me to call you MVP, particularly when we see a guy who we see doesn't have MVP talent in DeMarco Murray being considered that way because he ran behind the same offensive line.
But my response to your argument is that you're looking at overall talent as opposed to production. What I'm saying is that production this year, Ezekiel Elliott has been more productive than Le'Veon Bell. And that might not be Le'Veon Bell's fault. The suspension might be. Right. And then after that, Todd Haley and Mike Tomlin's usage of him may factor into the equation. But there is no doubt that Ezekiel Elliott has been more potent this year than Le'Veon Bell. I don't have
either one of them in my top 5 MVP. MVP in the NFL right now, unless you get some kind of a weird season from a dominant player, like J.J. Watt got some consideration last year. He was having like an all-time great season. Okay, and even then he shouldn't have been MVP. You got 5 guys. Brady's out. You can't miss 4 games. Stop. Rodgers has forced his way into the conversation.
Le'Veon Bell was 4 games.
Yeah, right. That's why he's not in the conversation for me. But by that logic, I also think he's better at the position than Zeke. Zeke's played the whole time, but a lot of that's offensive line. I think Matt Ryan, Derek Carr. I know he had a bad game. Everyone has bad games. Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford, and Dak Prescott. If you want to take someone off the Cowboys, why wouldn't it be the quarterback who has so much more responsibility than the running back? I know in the offense Zeke is featured and he helps Dak do what he does, but Dak is still the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys, who's led the league at times this year in QBR and has lost 2 games all season.
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up, and we'll stay with the Dallas Cowboys. The year that DeMarco Murray won MVP, you could have easily put Tony Romo in there for the numbers that he had.
Same numbers.
I mean, for his third down efficiencies, for the completion percentage, yards completion, the things that Tony Romo struggled a little bit throughout his career. He had an excellent year that year. It's about production in the year. The thing that I've always had a problem with MVP is it's just like the Heisman Trophy. Are you saying that they're the best player in college football? No, they're not. They just had the best year. And so for Ezekiel Elliott, there's no way that you can look past that and say that he's not a number 1 or 2 as far as the ranking is concerned in the MVP. Yeah, Tom Brady speaks for himself. The numbers he's putting up, guys have been injured. He's still continuing to stay steady. He should be in that category. But yet and still, I think number 1 overall will be Ezekiel Elliott.
We'll say the only player with 1,800 yards rushing in his first NFL season, Eric Dickerson, who will be with us later in the show. And just so you guys know, he was not fined for jumping in that kettle, the Salvation Army. If I'm the Salvation Army, I'm trying to write the holiday season.
Smart
Right,
NFL.
That's
but I'm trying to partner with Zeke and help promote their cause.
Yes, smart
NFL.
Well.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. It's about
Got that
time.
one right. Check.
Especially where there would have been nothing for him to jump in to if you hadn't had it near the end zone.
Right.
Of course. All right, so you heard from these guys on Big D Star back, but who do you think it should be? Should Zeke be the NFL MVP? Go on Twitter now, vote. We'll share those results a little later in the show. The countdown continues. We're just about 2 weeks away, folks, from First Take's big move to ESPN, so make sure you join us as we go to ESPN on January 3rd. Meanwhile, thanks to the Patriots yesterday, the Broncos have now lost 3 of their last 4 games and are 9th in the AFC standings, 3rd in the AFC West. So the defending champs are in serious danger of missing the playoffs. Max Kellerman, what has happened to these Broncos?
All right, what has happened? Bad luck, basically. I mean, but let's be specific about how it's bad luck. Look, they've been to 2 of the last 3 Super Bowls. So the franchise remains in excellent shape. But sometimes in order to preserve the excellence of the franchise, you have to make decisions that are not in your best short-term or immediate interest. They let go of Malik Jackson's gone and Trevathan, and so their defense got a little thinner and a little bit worse, just a little bit worse from like kind of an all-time dominant position they were in last year. They got banged up in the secondary. They bring back C.J. Anderson. He gets hurt. So all these little things contribute to a team. Oh, and by the way, they were so bad at the quarterback position last year that Peyton Manning played in the playoffs, as bad as he was. And the reason he played is because that's how bad Osweiler was. And yet still they felt Osweiler was their best option, a guy who just got benched for the Texans to come back in the game, and offered him like $16 million a year. He got more elsewhere. So their number 1 option, who was terrible, Peyton Manning last year's gone. Their number 2 option, they couldn't even retain. So they go with their number 3 option, and Elway took a calculated risk here. Maybe we're good enough to get back to the playoffs anyway while we preserve our cap going forward because we have the nucleus of a dynastic team if we get this right. And all that said, they're going to just miss the playoffs this year. So it's like, what happened to them? The NFL happened to them. This is how it goes.
They're not the same type of football team that we've seen. They were defensive heavy last year, and they've had a lot of injuries on the D-line. Wolf has been hurt and banged out in and out every now and then. You look at their secondary, you mentioned it. They're not the same fly zone secondary. But the offensive line is not good. Let's not. We've glossed over it because we talked about Peyton and the run game. The reason the run game is not the same because, first of all, they have running backs by committee.
They were even inconsistent last year with Peyton, though. It wasn't until down the stretch they got
I'm glad you brought that up because, we can talk about Gary Kubiak and his offense. His offense is pretty much what made Mike Shanahan very successful in Denver. Being able to run the football with TD and Clint Portis and all these other guys that have been there. But the offensive line has to do their job, and they're not the same. They're not able to pick up blitzes. They're not able to open up holes for running backs that have come off the street because 7 guys have run the football for the Denver Broncos. Now you're asking Trevor Siemian, a guy who's never started, a guy who, came from Northwestern. All you heard about him was how smart he was and him just has strong arm. But the thing about it is they haven't fallen that far from what we've seen. Yeah, they're not going to make the playoffs. Now, what does this mean now going forward? Is Trevor Siemian going to be your guy? Free agency, are you going to go out and get defensive linemen, offensive linemen? You need a splash player. We've seen Demaryius Thomas. We've seen Emmanuel Sanders. Are you going to go get that tight end like you had with Julius, with their tight ends that they've had? Jacob Tamme, all these guys that have been very successful with Peyton Manning. But you need somebody to come with maybe Paxton Lynch. Eventually, we need to see what Paxton Lynch can do, and will he be your guy?
I believe in John Elway. I think he obviously is a 2-time Super Bowl champion as a quarterback. He's a Super Bowl champion as an executive. He deserves a lot of credit. But we can't completely absolve him from blame here. Because here's the reality. That offensive line, that is a question mark. That's got something to do with him. The losses on defense with Trevathan and Malik Jackson and those boys, that's got something to do with him. Your inability to defend against the run, your inability to struggle, or your struggles against tight ends, that's got something to do with him. And dare I say, you did push Peyton Manning out the door. Now, we understand Peyton Manning was done.
Yeah, he's done.
9 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, QBR 44. He looked absolutely awful. But we also have to take into consideration, and you would know this, Donovan, When you talk about a quarterback, you're talking about cerebrally as well. You're talking about intellectuals. I'm sure you can appreciate that, Max. It's not just about your performance.
I can appreciate it too. Yeah, thanks.
I call him Spot Kellerman. That's why, because his logic defies all. That's what I'm trying to say.
I thought it had something to do with my ears.
That's what I'm saying. That's the whole deal.
Ivy Leaguer at the
But my point is this. When you look at Peyton Manning, let's take this into consideration. He controlled both lines of scrimmage. You know what that's about. When you go up to the line of scrimmage, you can dictate what a defense does. You can dictate what an offense does because you outthink everybody else. And you know how to hurt people even when you have an inability physically to do the kind of things you were once capable of doing. And then you go from that to Trevor Siemian. That's a problem.
He's supposed to be smart, too.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying that he's not. I'm just saying inexperienced. But before that, you pushed him, you nudged him out because you thought you would retain Brock Osweiler. And maybe, just maybe, that was where you miscalculated because it's not just the offer you made him. You thought that would be enough to keep him. And you might have miscalculated. And in that regard, we got to hold Elway.
Good thing they did miscalculate.
That's what
let me add to that also. You got to remember, too, the offense that they were running wasn't Gary Kubiak's offense. It was Peyton Manning's offense.
Yeah. So well, they tried it early in the season, and he wasn't down with that.
And that's my point. So you're talking about this is Peyton Manning's offense. Although Peyton Manning is no longer there, now you're going to the Gary Kubiak offense.
But he just wants to run the football.
Yeah, well, he wants to run. In order for you to run the football, you
got to have a running back.
Yeah, you got to have a running back.
CJ's gone.
And CJ was hurt, and everybody else that they decided to bring in now is your guy. But if you're not blocking up front in that advanced blocking scheme, you're not going to open up holes for guys to be very successful. But in doing that, if you're running the football, it's more about the attempts in that offense. So now the bootleg is very big for any quarterback. We haven't seen Trevor Siemian get outside the pocket. He stays inside the pocket and throwing it to Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. And it hasn't been consistent enough for them to be on a level with the Kansas City Chiefs or more with the Oakland Raiders and how successful they are in the passing game. Now, defensively, we just can't gloss over the fact that people are going after Harris and also Talib. And people are going down the middle of the football field and challenging T.J. Ward to guard someone at the tight end or in the slot position. Their linebackers aren't the same. Trevathan's gone. He was their vocal leader, and he's no longer there. He's in Chicago. So it's not just so much of the offense in Gary Kubiak, but I'm going to put it all on him to me because your offense, you have to understand the talent that you have, and you have to cater it to the talent that you have and not just say this is my offense has been successful. No, you have to cater to the Trevor Siemians. You have to cater it to whatever running back is back there. If they can catch the ball, make them catch the ball and run screens. If they can run the ball, then pound it up the middle.
All your guys' criticisms are legitimate. I'm not questioning the legitimacy of the criticism. I'm just saying there is one Patriots. There's one Bill Belichick. You want to say Patriots light? That's Seattle with Pete Carroll. You know, Belichick and Brady, Carroll and Wilson. Every other team in the league either has to make the calculation that, all right, this season we're not going to put all our chips in the middle of the table. Like, we may not win the Super Bowl this season. We're going to try to compete because we want to preserve our cap space and all these things going forward. Or they do push it all to the middle of the table and they go, all right, this is our window. Let's go now because once that closes, we're going to have to rebuild. Only the Patriots and the Seahawks are franchises where year in and year out they are going to be in the playoffs. And you know what? No matter how they've reshuffled things, they have a shot to win the Super Bowl. So by that standard, that's not the Broncos yet, and probably because they've never found their young franchise QB.
That's the main
probably
thing.
Been the difference.
In order for you to win in this league, you got to have a coach and a quarterback combination that has experience and understand what it takes to win.
We're not saying the obvious, though.
Right.
That is that Gary Kubiak, Super Bowl champion Gary Kubiak, may have, back
up to John Elway.
No. Dare I say, may have gotten entirely too much credit for that title. When we think about that defense, it is what it is because of the personnel. That's Elway. When we think about the offense, it wasn't his. It was Peyton Manning's offense. So now, instead of looking at Gary Kubiak, the Super Bowl champion, maybe we need to refresh our memory of what we thought about him before he arrived in Denver. That means he was a coach of the Houston Texans when he had Matt Shaw. But
another
don't get me started with him.
Segue for me, Stephen A.
There you go.
Thank you. I appreciate
that.
Right. Savage move by Bill O'Brien in Houston's 1-point win over Jacksonville, flowing so nicely this morning. After Brock Osweiler's second pick in a quarter, the Texans coach didn't feel he was living up to his $37 million guaranteed. Osweiler was benched for Tom Savage, who has never started an NFL game.
I just try to make decisions in the best interest of the team. Any decision that we make here is always made in the best interest of the team. And at that point in time, I just felt like that was the best decision at that point in time for the team. And we don't make decisions on, how much a guy gets paid. We make decisions on what's the best way to win a game. I thought both guys, Brock and Tom, handled it like the professionals that they are. Very professional, the way they handled it. And we'll see what happens next week.
Stephen A., let's go there, because that's what we do here on First Take.
Yep.
Is Osweiler done in Houston?
I believe he is. And let me explain why. He just got there. It's just one season. It's a $72 million contract. It's $37 million guaranteed. I understand, that. And I'll tell you a real quick story, y'all. When I had, quite frankly, on ESPN 2 years ago, I had a guest on my show with me for an hour. His name was our president-elect, Donald Trump. And he threw out this story. He said, when you go to a bank and you borrow $3 million and you can't pay it back, you got a problem. But when you go to a bank and you borrow $300 million and you can't pay it back, we got a problem. He said the moral of the story is the more you convince somebody to invest in you, the more they must ensure your success. I never forgot that. And I think about that when I think about Brock Osweiler, because I'm thinking about the fact that you've invested all of this money in him. So the belief is, okay, we got to support him. Here's the problem. Your fan base doesn't. And when you are a quarterback, it's one thing when you get drafted and you get booed because people don't know no damn better, okay? And then you get to go up in there and perform. That's one thing. People are being presumptuous. But when you go out there and you actually do perform and they see your performance and they're booing you, ooh, that's bad. Because you have no credibility, no resume, no cachet to fall back on. So from that point forward, it's an uphill climb. And I don't believe Brock Osweiler has the makeup to overcome that in Houston, which is why I took the position that I take. I think he's done in Houston.
He's done because he's not good. He never was good.
I'm just saying.
Those Pac-12 quarterbacks, remember that little era where it was like Andrew Luck, and then there was Matt Barkley, and there was Osweiler, and there was Foles. Congratulations to them, because not Barkley, but Foles and Osweiler actually had a little run in the NFL. That's not easy. But
Barkley kind of is.
Barkley's doing a good job in Chicago.
Yeah. It's a backup. The point is they stuck more or less in the NFL, and some of them started, and Nick Foles had a good year under a certain system and everything. So that's not nothing. That's something that's better than most. But they're just not that good. Andrew Luck is a stud, and the rest of them just not that good. And Osweiler is tall. That's true. He was tall in college. That we can all see that. He just has never been that good. It was a mistake to give him the contract. And Tom Savage, by the way, Bill O'Brien is, to me, the hero of the story. Because in a league where you see head coaches consistently make cowardly decisions based on the fear of being second-guessed and the way the orthodoxy says they should do things, it's by the book, not going for it on fourth down, etc., this was a gutsy call for him to say, you sit down with all that money they owe him, and bring in a guy off the bench who leads a comeback win. To me, that's the big story. But he's
know the coaching tree comes from Bill Belichick.
That's right. But in terms of the Osweiler question, he's done because he's not that good.
Okay, let's really break this whole thing down. And I think that he's not done. Now, does he have the mental makeup? No, I don't believe he does, because he doesn't understand about having success. Now, when you understand about having success, you understand how to prepare for success. For a guy who struggled in Denver, went over to Houston, struggled from the beginning of the season, didn't even find his number one wide receiver since the time he's been in there. And all of a sudden, Savage comes in, and they target Hopkins so many times with Savage in there. It says a lot about this young man and his mental makeup. But let's go back to Bill O'Brien. Besides Tom Brady, what quarterbacks has he ever groomed to get ready and be an elite type of quarterback?
Hasn't happened.
There you go. That's something no one talks about. This offense, how many other quarterbacks have been very successful in this offense? Take Tom Brady out.
Tom Savage.
What, in a half? And remember, he was a
He's
draft
got a great
pick.
last name.
He was a draft pick by Bill O'Brien.
Right.
Now, why isn't
fourth rounder?
Well, right, but I'm saying from Pittsburgh, a lot of people talked about his upside. Yeah. But why hasn't he played leading up until this point? Because he's not ready. So why are you now all of a sudden going to throw him in there when you, at this particular point, still have a chance of making the playoffs, to throw a young man in there that you know is not ready to play a full game? Are you saying it's a
prerequisite to be a coach in the NFL, or a successful coach? Are you saying it's the most important thing, or it's just something that you have to have as a prerequisite to develop a quarterback? In other words, if you can't do that, you're DQ'd?
If you're an offensive-minded coach and you started being a quarterback coach, then an offensive coordinator, you should have on your resume that you've groomed a quarterback. And we can look back and say, well, you know what? That's a guy that was coached by Bill O'Brien. We can say the same thing about Josh McDaniels. Has Josh McDaniels been responsible for Tom Brady's success? And what other quarterback has been successful in his offense? Kyle Orton, Tim Tebow? No. See, this is the thing. So
you're not sold on Bill O'Brien?
I'm not sold on Bill O'Brien in this offense either. This is not an offense that's best suited for the talent that you have. Now, we talked about Pac-12 quarterbacks that haven't been successful. So what type of quarterback is Brock Osweiler? He's not a quarterback. But he's Ryan Mallett. He's Ryan Mallett to me.
But here's the problem.
Oof.
This is what they say about Brock Osweiler now. Season-long tendencies of being indecisive, holding the football too long, frequently overthrowing receivers, and forcing ill-advised passes. This is their critique of Brock Osweiler. Yeah. Look at what I just said. Those 4 things that I just said. That don't sound like no damn quarterback to me.
Well, it don't sound like a quarterback
because holding on the football too long.
Well, of course they don't say that because at this particular point, we've seen that.
All right, then.
So they're trying to cover themselves. So what are we going to hear about Tom Savage if he decides to start from 5 or 6 or 7 games? No experience, strong arm,
Donovan McNabb.
Inaccurate.
Donovan McNabb, give it to me straight. Are they wrong when they say Brock Osweiler looks indecisive? He's holding on to the football too long?
No.
He's overthrowing passes? That don't sound like a damn quarterback is what I'm trying to say.
We can also say that about Brian Hoyer. We can also say that about Ryan Mallett. We can say that everybody that's been in that offense. But these are guys that have been in that offense.
Are you saying that in another offense, Osweiler's a good NFL quarterback?
If the offensive coach caters the offense around his ability, you just paid him that money.
What is his ability?
His ability has a strong arm, get the ball downfield. Nothing to do with intermediate.
That sounds like Jamarcus Russell. He had a strong arm with the ability to get the ball down the field.
Were they both high draft picks?
Excuse me, and he was, listen.
That means the scouting department is not that good.
Mr. Jabba the Hutt himself, who should have been arrested for stealing money.
Why you got to talk about his size?
Look, he was eating burgers. That's why. Instead of being in the field, practicing. That's why.
I have one question, yes or no, because we have to go to break. You talked about his mental makeup, that he doesn't have the right mental makeup. Can that be coached, or is that innate as a quarterback
That's
to be
something
successful?
you're born with. That's just something you're born with. But I think he starts next week.
All right. Donovan, so good to see you. And now I don't have to say until next week. We're going to see you on Friday.
See you on Friday.
Every Monday and Friday.
On national television and defended Brock Osweiler.
He's going to start next week.
All right.
Could Andy Reid do something with Brock Osweiler?
Yes, he could. Did it with Nick Foles.
This is Larry Culpepper, inventor of the college football playoff. Goes without saying that I know about a good idea or two when it comes to college football. And the best idea out there is to subscribe to the Championship Drive podcast in the Listen tab of your ESPN app.
Mile high is Tom Brady's Achilles heel no more, my friends. Pats clinching their 8th straight division title and first-round bye against the defending Super Bowl champs in a 13-point win. The Pats have the struggling Jets in Week 16. Then they travel south to Miami for a regular season finale showdown with the Finns. Ryan Clark in the house. Good to see you.
What's up, guys?
How we doing?
I'll tell you what. They missed the real show.
Yeah, all right.
I could take it. Donovan McNabb was making fun of me because of my braces. I could take it.
I go into like protective mode, though.
It's all right. It's all right.
I wasn't even going to point that out. I was just saying we had
they got me.
Entertaining time.
No. I wouldn't hesitate to call somebody else out.
Donovan McNabb.
I'm just concerned about your health. I want you to know that's my focus.
My name cracked me. Oh, my goodness.
Boys,
started.
I won't even call you men. Max, including the playoffs. Will New England lose again this season?
Yeah, they're not going to win the Super Bowl this year, I don't think. But they can run the table. Look, they have 2 not terribly tough games left in the regular season, although to their credit, games are not terribly tough for them. It seems like they're always the favorite. You know, the better your team is, the easier the schedule looks. I think ultimately, they are not good enough to get it done in the Super Bowl this year, although they are highly motivated. But through the playoffs, because of home field, because they won't have to go to Arrowhead, because Denver won't make the playoffs, and anyway, you can see that they can't score any points. Look, Brady has not he's looked very good at times in the second half of this season, but he's had some real mediocre performances mixed in, as I warned everybody. And I don't think that through the playoffs, that team will be able to sustain a level of excellence necessary to win the whole thing. Though because of home field, I think they can get there.
Well, 22 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, a QBR of 89, a quarterback rating of 109. I'm glad you feel he's struggling. I get where you're coming from. I'm glad you think he's struggling. His last 2 games of the regular season are going to be against the Jets and at Miami. I think they're going to get home field advantage. I think the road's going to have to come through Foxborough, and I think because of that, they can easily run the table. That's how I view it, because I'm thinking Kansas City, Pittsburgh, Oakland. It doesn't matter who it is. I don't see anybody in the AFC going to Foxborough and winning a playoff game. So because
not
of that,
the Raiders, not yet.
I said no one. That includes the Raiders. So that brings us to the Super Bowl. And to me, it depends on who comes out.
So we look at the Jets. Obviously, we feel like that's going to be a win.
Yep.
New England struggles in Miami. The Miami games are tough. Depending on what happens with the Raiders, we'll see if all the starters play the whole game. But even with Jimmy Garoppolo, we know that team can win. And there's only 53 players on the team, so no walk-ons get to play in the last game. So they should probably run the table with the regular season. I agree with you about Foxborough. I believe this team gets to the Super Bowl. I'm going to say something, and it hurts me to say it on the show with these two people. I think the only way they lose a game is if they play the New York Giants in the Super Bowl.
Say it.
I believe they'll beat every other team. I believe they'll beat Seattle in the Super Bowl with the way that they're playing now. I love the Dallas Cowboys. I believe Tom Brady against Dak Prescott, who has played really well. I believe that Tom Brady outdoes Dak Prescott, and New England will beat them. If they play the Giants, because of the way the Giants are constructed, if Janoris Jenkins is healthy, they will play press man. Tom Brady won't be able to get those timing routes off. This is a team that doesn't run really well, and offensively, with the way that Malcolm Butler and that defense plays, the Giants can attack them and score points. If they play anybody else in the Super Bowl, the New England Patriots are my pick. If the Giants continue to ascend, if this defense continues to play well, and they play the New York Giants in the Super Bowl, that's the only way the New England Patriots don't run the table.
I got to tell you, I don't view the New England Patriots as a team that can't run the football. I think with LeGarrette Blount averaging 4 yards a carry, I think with Deion Lewis being back averaging 5 yards a carry, and the versatility that at least Deion Lewis can give you out of that backfield, believe it or not, with the underestimated acquisition of Michael Floyd. Michael Floyd has had some decent moments in the past. Has this year been good for him? Absolutely not. But he's playing for Belichick right now, who I think we all can acknowledge is the most prepared coach in the NFL. This guy, week to week, he makes adjustments. Every single week, he knows what he's going up against, and he usually knows, and he outthinks a lot of different coaches here. So when I look at it from that perspective, I don't view them as a team that can't run the football, that can't make noise, that will inevitably lose to the Giants or anybody else.
Blount just set a record.
I really believe that the Patriots.
Listen, I'm not
Gronk
saying
right now? I mean, like, if you have a healthy Gronk, if you got
makes
Gronk,
it a different game.
Okay, if that were the case, then you say, okay, look, New England, that's a whole lot. That's a whole lot to deal with in those big moments. And when Gronk has been less than his best self, New England, while still an excellent team, they're always excellent, it's not the same.
Well, if you look at this team, the thing that makes me feel like they can run the table, they will get to the Super Bowl, is they've learned how to win without Tom Brady being terrific, without him being Tommy terrific. You look at yesterday, yes, he did struggle. 50% completion rate, only 188 yards. But they found a way to win. Defense stiffened in the red zone, didn't allow a touchdown by Denver. And so when you look at this team, as far as playing in the AFC, I don't think they lose. I think they'll still be a tough out in the Super Bowl because of what you said. Bill Belichick, the way he prepares, the way this team will be prepared. I just feel if the New York Giants, with the way they're playing now, I think they're playing the best football in the NFC. Not saying they're necessarily the best team right now, but they're playing the best football. If they get to the Super Bowl, you have a quarterback who I dog on this show very often, who is not scared to go up against Bill Belichick in the big moments, who is not scared to face Tom Brady, and a defense that is playing sensational football. I think that is the team the New England Patriots do not want.
I will
Tom
sacrifice.
Coughlin's not there anymore. It's Mr. McAdoo now.
Yeah, but Spagnola's got him playing like the way he did, when Coughlin was
Jack
there.
Rabbit, get well soon.
I will sacrifice like 5 years of Knicks, like no playoffs for the Knicks for 5 years if that could happen, because the sports gods demand real sacrifice.
That might happen anyway, though.
Shut up, Brian.
Oh, no, I thought you were trying to give up something that was real.
Damn.
Let's talk about the NFC North now, shall we? If the season ended today, the Vikings would have played their way out of the playoffs in a 34-6 loss to the Colts. The Packers won a close one against the division rival Bears with Matt Barkley at the helm, and the Lions lost to the Giants at MetLife. So right now, Green Bay and Detroit control their own destiny in the two face-off Week 17 in Motown. That is going to be good. If they win out, they win the division. Stephen A., who you got winning the NFC North?
A few weeks ago, I said the Detroit Lions. I'm tempted to change my mind because I love me some Aaron Rodgers. He's a bad man. But I'm going to stick with the Lions. And the reason I'm going to stick with the Lions is because I don't trust Green Bay secondary. I trust Aaron Rodgers. I trust him to find a way. Ty Montgomery played like a beast yesterday. He was very, very impressive. And Jordy Nelson, had a sort of coming out party in terms of how he's looked years ago compared to how he's looked since that injury. But when I think about the Packers, it was nice to see Julius Pepper, the ageless one, get the strip sack and whatever. But I'm looking at Gunter. Even though Clinton Dix had 2 interceptions, I'm just looking at that secondary. I'm looking at Randall. I'm looking at Rollins and these boys. And I don't mean to be too critical. I'm just not a believer. I'm not a believer in that secondary. I could see Aaron Rodgers going out there, balling out, making sure that these boys do the things that they're supposed to do and putting up 27 to 30 points. I can also see that secondary allowing more than that. Matt Barkley was the quarterback yesterday in Chicago. Am I correct?
Yeah, Matt Barkley.
It wasn't even Jay Cutler.
Yeah, on the wetsuit.
It wasn't even Jay Cutler.
Well, that should be an improvement according to you.
Yeah, it is an improvement because he's the worst. Jay Cutler's the worst. But the point is this. Matt Barkley brought them back from a 27-10 deficit. Matt Barkley. This secondary. I have no faith in them. I have no faith in them. And that is why I am where I'm at. Well, I don't believe that Green Bay is going to do it, but it's because of that secondary. It ain't because of Aaron Rodgers.
Look, I thought that Detroit would also win the division, but when Aaron Rodgers says we're going to run the table, we're going to win this thing, he's just different than everybody else. I mean, when you equalize for everything, normalize everything else against that offensive line, running game, this, that, just who is the best? The answer is Aaron Rodgers, even in a down year. He's just better than everybody else. Look at the end of that game. You're like, hurry up. What are you doing? There's no time. Why is he procrastinating? What he's doing is he sees Jordy Nelson going to be open up the middle. So he's running down the clock so the Bears have no time left. Before, in frigid conditions, he throws, you can't call it a Hail Mary because only the offensive player has a chance at the ball, which he did twice on consecutive plays in the playoffs last year, by the way, taking them to overtime. And he is playing a different game than everyone else in the NFL. That's the best player on the planet, and they're going to win because of him. He is going to bring them to the playoffs.
Well, for me, I said that the Green Bay Packers will win weeks ago. First reason is Aaron Rodgers. The other reason, I looked at their schedule as compared to the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions finished at Giants, at Cowboys, at Green Bay. Against Green Bay. And so when you look at that schedule as compared to getting to go play the Chicago Bears, getting to play the Minnesota Vikings, and then facing Detroit in the last week, and we're talking about a duel with Matthew Stafford, who many people had him rising up the MVP ranks, had him as the dark horse to win it. Now, when Aaron Rodgers beats the Vikings, when Aaron Rodgers beats the Packers, he becomes my MVP.
Yeah,
you look at the numbers, and we were talking about Aaron Rodgers early in the season, like, oh, he's lost it. Like the cliff that Max talks about, like he walked off of it early. And then all of a sudden, he telling y'all to chill out. Now he's running around on one leg. And then Chicago Bears play a cover 4. The free safety takes the under route. He rolls to his left, throws one in the air that when it left his hand, I was like, what is he doing? It was a rainbow. It was a lollipop. And he basically handed it off to Jordy Nelson. And then he walked down the field, didn't run. He walked down the field and spiked the ball. Because he is that dude. He is that calm, that relaxed, and he believes in it. I never want to listen to him give a post-game interview. It makes me mad. The little cloud of arrogance is sitting over his head. But I've also never been that talented. And when you're that talented, sometimes you can act like that. This team.
He's your MVP.
Well, no, if he does all those things, I'm with him. I'm with Brian on that.
Because we talked about his numbers early, and the numbers were down early in the season.
If the season ended today, who's your MVP?
If the season ended today, it's now become a toss-up. It's now become a toss-up for me. Because for me, you got to put Dak in it, right? Tom Brady has snuck. At the beginning of the season, I said Tom Brady had no chance. Even with the last game, Tom Brady now has a chance to win the MVP because everybody else.
More from you.
Everybody else has fallen back to the pack.
You're better than this.
Derek Carr, right? Derek Carr. Oh, he's running away with it. And then Matthew Stafford jumped into it because he was bringing back Detroit every week. Now he's falling off. Now I expect them to lose the last 2 games of the season, which gives them a 3-in-a-row losing streak on the way out. We can't give it to him.
Ryan?
Matt Ryan's done for me. Matt Ryan's done for me.
So Brady's been that much better than them, in spite of the fact that he will have missed a quarter of the season. You would still have him as an MVP candidate.
Right now, today, yes, I would.
Oh, my God. It's even more than a quarter of the season now.
Listen. I'm not saying that I'm right. I'm just saying this is what I believe. This is what we get to come on First Take and do. This is why we get to be on the show.
Well, the hell with that. I'm right. Tom Brady should be the leader vote getter for league MVP right now. I don't give a damn how you feel. This notion that, you missed 25% of the season. The man is balling, and they're going to finish 11-1 with Tom Brady as the quarterback, and they're going to march through the playoffs into the Super Bowl. This dude's got 2 interceptions the entire year. He's flat out balling. I don't want to hear it. Let me get
I feel
to
like
Matthew
Felix
Stafford.
Unger on The Odd Couple. Steven.
Well, unfortunately, most folks don't remember The Odd Couple, even though I do, because I used to love that show, That and the Honeymooners. But that's a subject for another day.
That's
outrageous. The point that I'm trying to make to you is this. When I think about the Detroit Lions, they have no running game to speak of. Matthew Stafford got a little hurt.
It's his middle finger.
That's a big deal.
Clean glove, too.
That's a big deal. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. And so, again, over the last couple of weeks, he's thrown 3 interceptions. We get all that. But it's 2 games to go. I don't trust Green Bay secondary. I just don't.
Well, here's the thing. Mike Zimmer is the Aaron Rodgers killer, right? Like, that's what he's there for. And he seems to have lost the team. So I expect Aaron Rodgers to win that game. And with the season on the line against Detroit, I'll put my money on Aaron Rodgers every single time. So who stops Aaron? Like, when it comes down to it, Stephen A., we all know the game's going to come down to the closing minutes, and Aaron Rodgers is going to have the ball in his hand, and I ain't betting against that guy.
I've seen Green Bay secondary be so awful. I haven't recovered from it. I don't care what I've seen.
What about their first area, their primary?
Right now, you sound like a scorned girlfriend. You know what I mean? Hey, after a while, man, you got to come around. Life goes on. You got to move on for some things. Now, yesterday, right, Matt Barkley was able to get some plays after 4 turnovers. He threw 3 interceptions, also was a sack fumble. Devontae Adams drops 2 touchdowns. 2 touchdowns.
That's not supposed to be a close game.
Which allows them to stay in the game. Stephen A., I understand what we saw from them early on in the year. They were worse than bad. And they're not good now, but they are coming along. Randall is back. He played well other than a stiff arm he took to the face on a touchdown on a quick throw from Barkley. And so if you look at this team, they're coming along defensively enough. Not enough to win a Super Bowl, enough to win the last 2 games of the season versus division foes who have to stop Aaron Rodgers. And right now, on one leg, limping around, mushy-bodied and all, Aaron Rodgers is killing folks.
He's the best player. Okay,
mushy-bodied and all.
Everything equal, everything else equal. He the best player in football?
Yes.
Right. He's the best player in football.
All right, let's stay with
Molly.
the NFC, but move on. He's not the best player in football. Even though I'm happy he joined your radio show. For the 8th time in the last 9 weeks, the G-Men were victorious. New York held the Lions to 6 points, which is tied for the lowest amount of points scored by Detroit since 2010. The Giants now trail only the Patriots and Seahawks in points per game given up this season. Stephen A., is it fair to compare these Giants to the 2007 and 2011 Super Bowl teams? Do you have deja vu on your mind?
No, it is not. Only because their pass rush isn't as monstrous as it was back in 2007, 2011. Remember, when the New York Giants won the Super Bowl, you had JPP, you had Justin Tuck, you had Michael Strahan before that. You had, back to the days when the Giants won Super Bowls back in the day. It was LT and Carson and those boys coming at you. In this particular instance, when we look at this Giants defense, they seem to be a poor version of Denver from the standpoint that their secondary is their strength. It's Janoris Jenkins, even though I know they've had their moments, but Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie and Janoris Jenkins and Eli Apple, who made a big play yesterday and really, really showed why he has so much promise. It's those kind of things. Now, that's not to say they can't get at a quarterback, but that secondary sets it up because they have lockdown capability. And as a result, it gives you time to get to a quarterback. An extra second or 2 obviously matters. With the New York Giants from the past where they won Super Bowls, they were getting at the quarterback. And that is the difference between them and this team.
Well, Landon Collins has been balling this year. Not just look, the safeties have been better.
Oh, me.
Oh, Ryan Clark.
Okay. That's my guy.
Good job.
You're welcome, New York.
Train some more. Train some of the linebackers next time. But even the linebackers have been better than you figured. And Vernon and these guys, the free agent signings have worked. Rare in the NFL it works that way. All the free agent signings that they spent big money on, Jenkins and Vernon, these guys have been absolutely balling. Now, think about this Giants team. Does it remind you of the last 2 Super Bowl winners? Knock wood. Please don't say I'm jinxing anything here. But didn't catch fire till the second half of the season. Excellent defense, elite defense, peaking at the right time. Spagnuolo is the D coordinator. Just enough offense. And you still got Eli Manning, who, don't take my word for it, Nate Silver studied it, the most clutch quarterback in the history of the NFL playoffs, who, by the way, both times they were wild card teams that had to go on the road and win. It is very similar to those teams with one exception.
Yep.
They have an offensive weapon in Odell Beckham Jr., unlike anything else in the NFL, because there is simply nothing you can do. This dude, as I've been saying now for like 2 years, is the best wide receiver in the game. This is his era. Everyone else is playing in it, and there's some beasts. But Odell is different. And that little X factor actually makes this Giants team really live to win the Super Bowl right now. Knock wood. Shut up, Max. Don't jinx it.
Do you see his energy go up?
Hey, I think we should do Giants topics every time I'm on. I just like to listen to you talk about them. And unfortunately, you're right. I totally agree with that. I do see a ton of similarities between the two teams. There is a difference in which the defense plays, Stephen A., but there's not a difference in the dominance that we've seen the second half of the season. They have to go about it in a different way. If you look at the Pittsburgh game, Spags didn't send as many blitzes. Landon wasn't involved in the blitzes. Keenan Robinson, Jonathan Casillas. But we've seen over the last 2 weeks him dial it up because he understands that he has dogs on the outside. Eli Apple, who many were talking about may have been a reach at number 10, has actually been a revelation late in the season, guarding Golden Tate, who was unstoppable in many games this season. Double moves, making big plays in the red zone. And when you watch this team play each week, this defense gets better and better. And it's like we're holding our breath, waiting, just waiting for 13 to catch one where you let him start to run. Right? Every time he catches the ball, I stand up and look because I want to see who is going to tackle him. He had one yesterday. He catches a short pass. It was the in route, makes 3 people miss. And I legitimately said when he caught it, he's going to score. Because that's how I feel every time he gets an opportunity to get the ball. The thing that they have to do is Eli has to understand, though Eric Flowers is a revolving door.
Oh, my God.
Right? He just,
that's the
I don't even know if
Achilles
it's
heel of the
revolving.
team.
Maybe sometimes he should just let him run by because at least he won't get the penalty. And at least
he's like a concierge, come right in.
Yeah, we will know how long it takes. Eli has to understand he has to be tough. He has to stay in the pocket because when he gets the other people involved, whether it's Vereen, Shepard in the slot, that's when this offense is a lot better. And we saw some of those things happen in the second half.
I want to bring up, because if there's a problem for the Giants, it's Flowers, the left tackle, who many thought was the most talented offensive lineman in the draft, but really hasn't panned out yet. He's still very young, 22. Maybe he can get it together. He's beaten on every play. So either someone's getting to Eli, he has to get rid of the ball in under a second and a half, or they call him for a hold because he holds on every play where someone didn't get to the quarterback. That's the Achilles heel. About Odell, he has 10, ESPN Stats and Info tweeted this yesterday during the game. He has 10 touchdown catches since week 5, which leads the NFL. And I've noticed in the last several weeks, we were critical of him on this show a couple weeks ago when he was still chirping about stuff. And maybe I'm imagining it because it's since week 5 he's been productive. But, boy, he looks like on a mission to me right now. Like this looks like, I know he had a couple drops, but this looks like a motivated Odell.
Let me say something. You bring up Odell Beckham Jr. Doesn't someone have to throw the ball to him? See, we get caught up in the receivers. And listen, Eli Manning is a 2-time Super Bowl champion. Nothing but mad respect for him. Every playoff appearance hasn't been spectacular by this man. Not every one of them.
Playoff appearance?
Playoff.
I mean, when he went to Lambeau and beat Favre or Rodgers, or went to Dallas, beat Romo?
I'm sorry. Your high intellectual self can't distinguish between the word every. I said every. I didn't say he didn't have
any. You got high intellect, though.
I didn't say he didn't have any. I said not every.
He went on the road and won all those games.
He went on the road twice, but there's a couple of times, like for example, I've got the numbers right in front of me right here. Okay. He struggled a couple of games. All I'm trying to say to you is this: Odell Beckham Jr. is the man. But Eli's got to get it to him. And Eli has gotten older. There are moments where Eli has very big moments. And there are times where you have found him disappointing you. You didn't see that dude open? You didn't make that pass? You didn't get it there? What's up with you? He's been inconsistent. So what I'm trying to say to you is that you keep relying on something I'm not sure that we can pencil in as reliable all the time. Because the level of consistency that we want from some guys, sometimes he doesn't have that.
Eli, the safety, Eli.
Well, this is an understatement. It's been a rough year for the Rams in their return to Los Angeles. They've lost 9 of their last 10 games and fired head coach Jeff Fisher. Here to talk all about it is a future Hall of Famer here, and Eric Dickerson. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you very much. Not future, Hall of Famer.
Hall of Famer. Excuse me.
That's okay.
You're there.
Present.
You're there.
You know
Hall of
what
Famer.
threw me off there? I had future of football that I wanted to ask
There
you
you
about
go,
in
there you
LA.
go.
So I want to focus on that. So after losing to the Seahawks, Tavon Austin talked about how difficult it is to play in LA. We know how difficult it is to play in the NFL, period, but the city of Los Angeles, the hype, the hoopla, the expectations.
Well, you know, when the Rams came to LA, I kept telling everyone that this team has to win here. This is a city that's all about winners. It's glitz, it's glamour, it's Hollywood. You can't come here going 4-12, 6-10. That's not going to work in LA. I mean, that may work someplace else. And I kept saying it over and over. They've got to win. Or if they don't win, they have to have an exciting product. And they've really done neither one.
Well, first of all, I'd like to take a moment to applaud you because I think you deserve to be applauded. The reason why is because that phone call that you got from Jeff Fisher one day clearly upset him, and all you were doing was telling the truth and bringing attention that desperately needed to have attention brought to it, which was the Los Angeles Rams stink because their record stinks because their head coach just wasn't very damn good anymore, and he had too much of an opportunity. I want you to take us back to that phone call that you received from Jeff Fisher and what that was like for you.
Well, first of all, I was invited out to the groundbreaking ceremony. That's when I come out. I said, sure, I'll come out. But I'd heard the grumbling already. So when I got there, I could tell it was kind of a little tension between some of the Rams staff and myself, but no big deal. So after I got ready to leave, I asked the guy, I said, hey, what about those passes I asked you for my friend? But now keep in mind, I didn't really need them. I just wanted to see, was it true?
Right.
You know? So they said, well, Eric, I'm not sure. You know, we have the media department, you know, they said some of the stuff you said about the team. I said, huh? I said, well, am I lying? Well, no, you're not lying, but you know, I said, well, he said, I tell you what, someone's going to call you. Jeff Fisher or Les Snead will call you. I said, okay. I said, I welcome the call, no problem. So I left. I got home. I'm talking to my best friend, Charles Drayton, on the phone. And he said, Dick, you lying. They going to call you? I said, he's supposed to call me. And I'm talking to him for about 20 minutes. All of a sudden, I see a 314 area code. I said, Drayton, let me call you back. He said, man, I wish I was on this call.
Right.
So I answered. So I said, hello. Hey, Eric, this is Jeff Fisher. I said, how you doing, Jeff? He said, I'm good. He said, look, I'm going to get right at this. He says, you know, I don't really have time for this, but I'm just going to say this. You know, you're not going to be talking about my football team, my coaches, and then expecting things from the team. As long as I'm head coach, we're not doing anything for you. We're not supporting anything you do. And I'm just letting you know that right now. As long as I'm head coach, that's not going to happen. You make my team uncomfortable. You make the players uncomfortable, and you make the coaches uncomfortable when you come on the sideline. So that's just not going to happen. So I just want to let you know. And blah, blah, blah. He goes on. I didn't say one word. I just listened. So when he finished, I said, okay. And I think he thought he was going to hang up.
Yeah.
I said, okay, Jeff. He said, okay, thanks. I said, no. I said, it's my turn. He said, okay. I said, Jeff, let me explain something to you. First of all, I'm a grown-ass man. I said, I don't need nothing from the Rams. I said, you think I've been sitting around here waiting for the Rams to come back? I said, no, I have not been. I said, if I want something, I'll pay for it. I said, if y'all think I owe you something, send me a bill. I'll gladly pay for it. I said, Jeff, I said that my thing is that I want my football team to win. I said, you could get fired, Les Snead could leave, Kevin Demoff could leave, but I'll still be Eric Dixon of the Los Angeles Rams. I say, I want my football team to win. I support the players. I'm a player first, always. Then all of a sudden it changes. Well, Eric, we want you to come over, man. That's not what we want, blah, blah, blah. You know, we had Britney Spears come over last week, and I'm like, now, I don't care nothing about no Britney. I mean, not no offense against Britney Spears, but I'm talking about
She's
football.
not in the Hall of Fame playing
Now,
for the Rams.
Isn't it true, before I let you go back, isn't it true that Jeff Fisher initially denied that he had spoken to you?
You know what? I don't know, because I didn't. One thing is, this had happened about 2 weeks prior. I didn't say anything at first. I didn't say anything about it. So, you know, on my show on 570, they kept teasing me about, man, you're on the Rams hit list. You know, you're the new #1 enemy of the Rams. And I just laughed. And so they said it again the following week. And I said, man, I'm going to say this. I said, I got a call from someone in upper management. And they were like, huh? I said, yeah. And I said, well, I kind of said what they told me. They were shocked. And so I never said it was Jeff Fisher. And I'll say this much here. If Jeff Fisher said he never made the call, I'd have said he never made the call. I mean, that's just how I felt. I wanted to keep this really in-house, but I just got sick of hearing how I'm bad-mouthing my football team. I'm just telling the truth, what everyone else saw. I said it from week 2. I said the offense looks like a high school offense. I said the defense is doing all the work. And if I'm a defensive squad, I'm like, look, man, golly, help us out a little bit. Do something different. And that was it.
To paraphrase Wally Shawn from The Princess Bride,
I like
two major mistakes made throughout history. One, never get involved in a land war in Asia. And second, and only slightly behind that, is if the Los Angeles Rams are returning to L.A. for the first time in almost a half century, and your teams have stunk on ice for years, and you're the head coach of the Rams, maybe don't pick a fight with the greatest player in the history of the franchise. That's insanity. Particularly when, and Eric, you could talk to this, I just spent 5.5 years in L.A. Let me tell you the difference between the New York market and the L.A. market when it comes to sports. And this goes for the difference between L.A. and even Philly or Boston or a place like that, the cold weather, kind of bitter, northeast cities that really are crazy about sports. If you stink in New York, they'll still pay attention to you. They'll just be cursing you out all day. There is pressure in New York City to win now. In L.A., I wouldn't say it's pressure. I would say you have to deal with distractions. And if you don't handle those distractions, they're not going to kill you. They will forget about you.
Right.
They forgot about you. They'll go outside. The weather's nice. Anyway, I guess it's not a question. It's more of a statement. But I think I'm more outraged about what happened to you than you are.
Look, my thing is, and I said this to Jeff Fisher, I just want my team to win. I mean, I think the Los Angeles Rams fans deserve better. I mean, they came from St. Louis. The St. Louis fans deserve better. And to come to L.A. and put this kind of product on the field, it's not fair to the fans. I mean, I saw Coach Pete Carroll. It was, 4 weeks ago. He was leaving the field with his players. They made a big stand on the goal line. And he was like a kid, like excited. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. I said, that's the kind of coach we need. We need something like that. I said, that's what we're missing. As a player, that's what you want.
With that being said, who would you like to see as the next head coach for the Los Angeles Rams?
Man, it's a wide variety of guys. I mean, Jim Harbaugh would be a choice, but like I said, I'm not writing that check. That's Stan Kroenke. John Gruden would be a choice for sure. I think he could come in. I like guys who have been head coaches before, but say there's not one that's not been a head coach. I mean, I think Kyle Shanahan would be a possibility. I mean, he's an offensive coordinator. It's a lot of guys out there, but you got to have a coach that fits that team, the personality, the organization. I mean, and I guess I'll say it starts at the top. I mean, the top has to be cleaned up before you can get a coach. I mean, that has to be.
That Les Snead, too? I mean, he's the one who, look at these draft picks that aren't hitting.
Look at our draft picks. I mean, it's almost like this. It's almost like, okay, the bullseye is over here, and we're drafting over here. Like, I'm like, who's picking these guys? I mean.
And how much of that is development? Like Mark Schlereth talks about that. People confuse drafting with development, not always the same thing. How much of that is missing in the draft? That's Snead. How much of that is lack of development, which would be under Fisher?
Well, it's a lot of it. I think, he's a defensive-minded coach. And our defense is good. I mean, but the defense is not going to last forever. They can't keep going at this rate. You have to have some offense, and that's what we're missing. We're missing on so many offensive players. They'll draft a guy in the 4th round and get it right. We'll draft a guy in the 1st round, 2 of them, and get it way wrong. Like, how are these guys playing? And I think that's where the disconnect is.
The bright side is you can only go up for here. But speaking of offense, you are the only first year to account for 1,800 rushing yards in your first NFL season. Ezekiel Elliott, he's on pace potentially to do something like that. We asked Twitter, should he win MVP? 51% said no. Your thoughts?
As I look at the MVP race, and I think people, and I know you're not a Cowboy fan, neither am I.
That's right.
I'm a Steeler fan, like you.
There we go.
Growing up
Smart man.
Yeah.
Smart man.
But I'll say this much here. When I look at that football team, I've been saying it for a while, co-MVP. Zeke and Dak, they go great together. I mean, I think one couldn't exist without the other. I mean, I believe that. So for me, I'd have to go I can't give it to Zeke and I can't give it to Dak solely.
I ain't mad at you. I'm just hoping that Jerry Jones messes it all up. I'll put Romo up in there. That'll make my day. I see it coming. I see it coming.
Eric, thank you so much for traveling all the way to be here with us, to have a Hall of Famer here in the house. We appreciate you and your honesty.
Man.
And don't think you're going to get anything from First Take.
College football lives here. When the season began, both Michigan and Florida State had their sights set on a trip to the playoff.
Over the middle, diving catch, touchdown Michigan!
Now they go head-to-head in one of the most compelling bowl games this season.
It's a tip, and a catch, and a touchdown! Oh, my goodness!
The Capital One Orange Bowl. Coverage begins Friday, December 30th at 8 Eastern on ESPN and on ESPN Radio.
A surveillance video of Oklahoma running back Joe Mixon punching a female student in 2014, breaking 4 bones in her face, was released Friday after an Oklahoma Supreme Court order. We warn you that this video is disturbing. The woman, Amelia Molitor, has filed a suit against Mixon. At the time of the incident, Mixon was charged with a misdemeanor and was suspended by Oklahoma for the 2014 season. He received a 1-year deferred sentence from the court. Now, in a statement, the university said it was aware of the video and told Mixon that violence against women would not be tolerated. Stephen A., your reaction?
It's no excuse, obviously. He has to pay the price. And I know that he was suspended for the year. I get that. But you're talking about a guy that's aspiring to come to the NFL. And regardless of what anyone wants to say, how anyone wants to interpret it, you can't have something like that happen. You can't have something like that that's tolerated. Not to mention the fact that, again, in the aftermath of the whole Ray Rice situation, regardless of how wrong people want to say this is in terms of Ray Rice compared to a Greg Hardy or anybody else, visual matters. Video matters. You have 2 eyes for a reason. What you see is far more impactful than what you read in situations like this, no matter how we want to slice it. And so when we look at it from that perspective, and then we think about the times that we're in, and we think about the NFL and the attention to this issue that people have accused the NFL of essential negligence at times in the past and what have you, even though they've clearly made strident just efforts put forth by them to address these issues. To have this guy coming into the league with this video out is something that a lot of NFL teams are going to be highly reluctant to touch, because they're going to look at it and they're going to say, they're not going to just sit up there and say, Max, it's the pass. They're going to sit up there and say that video is out. That video is something that's going to be re-aired in our local market, whoever drafts this guy. And that's going to resonate. It's going to have a detrimental impact.
Really quickly on that thought, because I think it's very sad. With Greg Hardy, we didn't have quite the same outrage as Ray Rice, of course, because of the visual. And I look at something like this. We had a guy like Tyreek Hill. It didn't hurt him. He's balling right now for the Kansas City Chiefs. And he choked and punched his pregnant girlfriend in the stomach and in the head. So you could argue that's more egregious because you're hurting 2 lives.
No question.
So that didn't affect him. Again, why? Because potentially there's no visual.
This is the way our brains are wired. You know, we can read statistics about what's happening in Aleppo or wherever around the world, and you hear about the casualties, but that's abstract. It's just the way our brains are wired, you know, so that we can deal with stuff right in front of us. There's an evolutionary advantage, I guess, to it. And when they're abstract numbers, that's one thing. So there's been commentary in recent days about this situation. Why should the video make a difference? We already know the facts. And as a statement of fact, and in terms of due process, that is true. Even in terms of what our outrage should be in a kind of technical sense, it's true. But there's something different about seeing a 217-pound running back hauling off and cold clocking this young woman as though he's in a bar fight with another football player. That just affects you differently. We can't help it. It's the way we are. And what this really boils down to now is a year suspension enough? Because there will be a residual price to pay going forward in terms of his reputation, even in terms of his draft status, everything like that. But there is a larger question, is a year enough?
There's something important that needs to be said here. There are going to be people out there who saw that video, and they're going to sit up there and they're going to say, She hit him first. I'm saying it doesn't matter. There's nothing that justifies what we saw in that video. And
just leaving her like that. And just leaving her,
that's right. Okay. But let's also make sure we point this out. Just what Max said. We want to act like the visual doesn't matter. The visual matters. I could sit up there and I can know that you're wrong. I could want you arrested. I could want you to suffer. But if I'm reading an article about what Mixon did, it is entirely more impactful when I see it. It's like
I totally understand the visual piece. I totally get it.
And it shouldn't be that way, but it is.
Humans. I totally get it. But we have to get to the point that we don't need the visual because if I know how much you guys care about your significant others, your daughters. If you don't have a video, but you hear that she's getting punched in the face or punched in the stomach, especially those kind of things should be enough.
Right.
And we need to get to the point where we don't have to have video, where there's the same vitriol when we're reading about it.
Right. We have to get to that point. But here's the flip side to it. We're watching radio, or we're listening to a game on radio. We're watching it on television. What do you prefer if you have the choice? Because seeing something and hearing it at the same time is more impactful. You have daughters, so I'm a daddy too. Here's the deal. I can sit up there and I hear it. I don't need to see anything else. I know what I'm going to do. But I will acknowledge that even though I'm going to do something, if my daughter came home and I visually saw.
Needed her jaw wide.
You see what I'm saying? I can hear about it, and that's all I need, but there's no doubt that it's going to raise to another level once you see it. It's just, you can't help it. It's sad that it is that way, but you can't help it.
Even though, like, of course, we're very invested in due process and not just having an outrage competition when something like this happens, and yet at a certain point, someone will have to be made an example of. And it's not, it's like you're speeding on the highway and you get pulled over and it's like, but everyone else was too. Someone's getting pulled over and it happened to be you. One of these, and not to make a moral equivalency, but one of these incidents is going to have to be used to demonstrate a zero tolerance policy on domestic violence or violence toward women, especially when this is not something that affects an economic unit of a family. We've talked about this, where he's the primary breadwinner in the house. If women are dissuaded from reporting on men in these situations because he loses his job and now they have no source of income, that's not good either. But that's not this. They're not a couple, and he's not the breadwinner, and this is not an economic relationship. This is assault. So maybe this is a good, or would have been a good time to make an example of someone.
Of course, we have to get to the point where no video is needed, and we have the same reaction.
I think you're right. I just don't know if we'll ever get to the point where the absence of video will be the same.
People can't get off because there's no cameras there.
Oh, no, nobody should get off, period. Nobody should get off, period.
But that's where we need to get. Mixon apologized last month and said racial slurs were a holdout in which he initiated the incident. Attorneys for the victim deny those claims. In the 11 games for the Sooners this season, Mixon has rushed for a team-leading 1,183 yards, 8 touchdowns. Oklahoma plays Auburn in the All-State Sugar Bowl. That's January 2nd.
By the way, Mixon, racial slurs, this don't cut it in this particular situation, bro. No. Nobody want to hear that.
Josh Norman taking on his former team tonight. And in the offseason, Carolina placed a franchise tag on Norman and then pulled it away, letting him become a free agent. Norman said last week that he felt backstabbed. Real Hodge in the house. How we feeling? How we living?
Oh, living good.
What's going on, my man?
What's going on, brother?
It's cold outside.
Oh, it is cold.
It's good to be in.
It is. Says the girl in the tank top in the winter. Stephen A., what do you expect from Josh tonight?
Well, listen, I don't think he's going to have a spectacular game because I don't think that the Carolina Panthers are going to be throwing the ball 50 or 60 times. I could be wrong about that, but I think that they'll be smart enough to attack others, not him. I think they'll be smart enough to try to run the football effectively, and we'll see what happens. But is he going to make some noise? I don't think there's any question because bottom line is Carolina isn't that good this year. Kelvin Benjamin has not been overly impressive to me at all. It's like, first of all, he's a big target, but he's not the greatest route runner, which you can elaborate on. And there are times where I dare say I've questioned his effort just watching him. I could be
only
wrong
on every play.
Yeah. I'm just saying I've watched it. I don't want to do that to him because that's the ultimate indictment. But there have been times where I said, damn, he could have ran that route harder. He could have showed me a little bit more effort. And I think that Josh Norman's going to be out there to prove something. He's going to be playing gung-ho. But to me, I look at Mr. Gettleman. And my biggest thing, Merrill, is this. You made the offer and you took it off the table. Had you made the offer and said, take it or leave it, that's our final offer, that would have been different. The fact that you took it off the table before he had an opportunity to accept it or not, you had a problem with this man trying to maximize his marketability, which I found egregious, especially since he didn't have a backup.
I agree. Now, listen, I don't think there's any player that, as a free agent, and rather how you leave, you want to stick it to the other team, especially if they didn't want you, they didn't make a great effort. And to document what you just said, there's no doubt Josh Norman. Now, what the problem will be, Josh Norman's emotions controlled in this one. And do not think for a second tonight the Carolina Panthers aren't going to go after him. I actually disagree with you. I believe they're going to say, hey, listen, we're going to show you why we got rid of Josh Norman or we didn't want to pay him the type of money. I will not be surprised if they don't go after him tonight.
And therefore, I think he's going to have a really big game because I think Carolina's going to be playing from behind. You see the receivers they got, in Washington, and Kirk Cousins good enough to get it done with those guys if you can't get pressure on them. And Josh Norman is highly motivated, and he is an excellent player. Whether or not you thought he's worth the money, apparently this year it appears maybe he was. He's an excellent player. He is going to have a big game, I think, Merrill, and I think he's going to be loud about it as he's having it.
There's no doubt. Now, it'll be interesting to find out because they've moved Josh around more this year than, say, what they do with the Carolina Panthers. The Redskins have used him. So it'll be interesting if they don't match him up or who they match him up with. That will be, I think, first of all, it could be an indictment on the Carolina Panthers of what the Washington Redskins or Josh Norman feel about their receiving core.
Any chance the Panthers win, you think?
No,
there's always a chance.
No. It's NFL.
Keep it hope alive.
It's NFL. It's a chance. But the
saying is a chance.
I will say this to you. Let me put it to y'all this way.
All right.
The Redskins must win this game. You're vying for a playoff spot. All that chatter that you did early in the season, you lose a game like this, I'm going to have a problem with the Redskins. Yeah. You got to win this game.
Well,
you got to win this game.
If you lose it, not only is that in question, but you're going to get Josh Norman questioned.
Especially leaving that front four kind of soft if you're Washington. It's been
a lot of questions.
It's been that kind of year for Carolina, though. Isn't this the kind of game they lose, right? It's just been a bad year all around. They go in, they face the player that they let go and everything, and they get beaten. He has a bad game. He rubs it in their face. That's been the story of Carolina this entire season.
Yeah, well, listen, if they do it right, the Redskins are loaded offensively. There's nothing they can't do. So they should run this game, but...
And we can also put a strong outfit from Cam Newton post-game. It's that time of the day. Stephen A., take us home with your final take. The floor is yours.
Yeah. 2 down, 2 to go. To many, that probably sounds cruel, doesn't it? This quasi-celebration of sorts following the unceremonious dismissals of Jeff Fisher in L.A. and now Gus Bradley in Jacksonville. One would ask, how dare you, Stephen A., or anyone else for that matter, actually come across as if someone's firing is a cause for celebration, especially when there are no plans on stopping there, knowing there will be more calls for a Rex Ryan and a Marvin Lewis to be next on the hit list. Well, here's a thought. Instead of lamenting the firing of guys, how about applauding the opportunities the firings will actually create? Did anyone know that Mike McCarthy would win a Super Bowl a couple of coaches after Mike Holmgren finally departed from Green Bay years ago? How about Mike Tomlin and his 2 Super Bowl appearances, along with the Super Bowl title, following the departure of Bill Cowher? So many times we all sit here thinking of folks who've lost their jobs, yet rarely do we think enough about the opportunities they've had, what little they've done with it, and what opportunities end up being denied to those on the come up. When are we going to stop this? Fisher, to remind everybody, had nearly 22 seasons in the NFL as a head coach, missed the playoffs 16 times, got one extension after another, ended up walking away reportedly with anywhere from $10 to $14 million, then practically bragged about it on his way out the door. And do we really want to get into Gus Bradley? The man who never won more than 5 games in any season he's coached, who went 14-48 in nearly 4 full years as the head coach, despite the bevy of young talent the Jaguars have at their disposal? The point is, why worry about these guys and their feelings? What happened to creating opportunities for others? Every coach has coaches. Every team has coaches and coordinators. We can't begin to count the list of individuals starving for a shot, their golden moment of opportunity, their chance to be the next Mike McCarthy or Mike Tomlin. Everybody can't be the prodigal son that Jerry Jones anointed Jason Garrett to be. So the only way to move forward, to create opportunities for others, is by stripping those once given the chance, once they failed. It's the way the world works. Let's get over it, please. Even if it is during Christmas time. Last checked, both Bradley and Fisher can afford Christmas gifts. No doubt, Rex Ryan and Marvin Lewis will be able to as well, once they're given the pink slips, as they so richly deserve.
Stephen A., well said. And if you want more of Stephen A.'s final takes, you can always catch them. They live on our First Take Twitter and Facebook pages. You can catch them there for sure. And we are moving on over. January 3rd, First Take moves from ESPN 2 to ESPN. Stay tuned for that. We're looking forward to it. We're going to have a lot of special guests that first week. We're excited about it. And also, guys, we got a Monday Night Football tonight.
Yes.
Carolina at Washington.
Redskins.
Yep.
Washington wins.
Yep.
Washington wins. It's that kind of season for Carolina.
Josh Norman, big game.
If Washington loses,
Norman got a ball.
And he's going to be loud about
to Carolina tonight, they should shut the hell up until next season.
See you guys tomorrow.
Anyway.
Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. Catch First Take Monday through Friday on ESPN2. Have a great day. Enjoy the game. We'll see you all tomorrow.
Penn State has won 9 straight, the Big Ten title, and are ranked 5th in the nation. USC awaits winners of 8 in a row. The Rose Bowl game presented by Northwestern Mutual, January 2nd at 5 Eastern on ESPN Radio.